A policeman hit a disabled girl, but he did not know that her father was an FBI agent. The sound of flesh meeting flesh echoed through the summer festival like a thunderclap. For a heartbeat, time stood still. A police officer's raised hand hung in the air, his face contorted with rage, while an 8-year-old girl in a wheelchair touched her reddening cheek, tears welling in her eyes. The crowd froze, phones raised, capturing the moment when protection turned to brutality. But they didn't see what Officer Jake Wilson saw: the ghost of his dead daughter in the girl's eyes, a haunting reminder of his greatest failure. None of them knew this single act would change their community forever. In just a moment, you'll witness a story that will touch your heart deeply. But first, take a second to tell us where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button. Your voice matters in this journey of justice. Maya Thompson's world was a canvas of vibrant colors, despite the constraints of her wheelchair. At 8 years old, she had already mastered the art of painting with her mouth, creating beautiful watercolors that hung proudly in her father's FBI office. Her blue wheelchair, adorned with stickers of famous artists and splashes of paint, was as much a part of her identity as her infectious laugh. Born with cerebral palsy, Maya never let her condition define her spirit. Her father, Derek Thompson, had raised her alone since her mother's death during childbirth, creating a bond that went beyond typical father-daughter relationships. He'd taught her to see her disability not as a limitation, but as a unique perspective on life. Every morning, Maya would position herself by her bedroom window, sketching the sunrise with delicate strokes, her determination evident in every line. At school, Maya was known as the art whisperer, transforming blank papers into stories of hope and resilience. Her art teacher, Ms. Collins, often said Maya didn't just paint pictures, she painted emotions. Her latest series, Wheels of Wonder, featured whimsical scenes of wheelchair-bound characters soaring through clouds and dancing among stars, inspiring both students and teachers alike. Derek had converted part of their home into an art studio with lowered easels and specialized brushes that Maya could control with her mouth. The walls were lined with her progress from early stick figures to increasingly sophisticated landscapes and portraits. Every piece told a story of persistence, of a young girl refusing to let physical limitations stop her from expressing herself. Their evenings were spent sharing stories about their day, Derek careful to shield her from the darker aspects of his FBI work, while Maya enthusiastically described her latest artistic achievements. These moments, filled with hot chocolate and gentle laughter, were sacred to them both. Despite the challenges they faced, their home was a sanctuary of love, creativity, and understanding. Maya's condition meant regular physical therapy sessions, but she approached each one with the same determination she brought to her art. Her therapist often remarked that Maya's artistic practice had actually improved her motor control. The little girl saw each challenge as an opportunity to create something beautiful, turning medical exercises into graceful movements that inspired her next painting. The community had embraced Maya's talent, featuring her work in local galleries and school exhibitions. Her most popular piece, Dancing in My Dreams, showed a girl twirling under starlight, her wheelchair transformed into golden wings. The painting had sold at a charity auction, with proceeds going to support art programs for disabled children. Through her art, Maya had created a network of friends and supporters. Weekly art classes at the community center became a highlight for many children, disabled and able-bodied alike, who were inspired by her teaching. She showed them that creativity knows no physical bounds, that imagination can soar even when legs cannot. Derek watched his daughter's growing influence with pride and amazement. Despite the countless doctors who had warned of limitations, Maya continued to prove that the human spirit could transcend any physical constraint. Her medical file spoke of disabilities, but her art spoke of possibilities. As spring turned to summer, Maya worked on her most ambitious project yet, a mural for the children's hospital where she received treatment. Using a specially designed mount for her brushes, she was creating a sprawling landscape of hope, filled with children of all abilities playing together under a rainbow sky. It was her way of showing other children that dreams don't require permission to soar. Officer Jake Wilson stood before his bedroom mirror, adjusting his badge with trembling hands. 5 years had passed since he lost Emily, his precious daughter, who, like Maya, lived her brief life with cerebral palsy. The reflection showed a man hardened by loss, once celebrated as Chicago's finest, now barely holding himself together beneath a polished uniform. Before Emily's death, Jake had been legendary in the force, known for his exceptional work with troubled youth. His approach to community policing had earned him numerous commendations and a feature in the local newspaper titled The Guardian Angel of South Side. His specialty was connecting with children others had given up on, perhaps because he understood vulnerability through Emily's eyes. The incident that shattered his world occurred on a rainy Tuesday. Emily, age 7, had a medical emergency while Jake was responding to a domestic violence call. By the time he reached the hospital, she was gone. His wife, Sarah, never forgave him for choosing duty over family that day, though she remained by his side, carrying their shared grief like a heavy shadow. The department had offered counseling, but Jake refused, turning instead to isolation and rigid adherence to protocol. His compassionate touch with troubled youth transformed into strict enforcement of rules. Fellow officers noticed the change. His eyes no longer crinkled when he smiled, his laughter became rare, his reports increasingly focused on infractions rather than understanding. Each morning, Jake would pause at Emily's shrine in their living room. Photos showed a bright-eyed girl in her wheelchair, painting sunshine despite her struggles. The last picture, taken days before her death, captured her triumphant smile after mastering a new therapy exercise. These moments haunted his dreams and colored his every interaction. The police department's psychologist had diagnosed him with PTSD, recommending desk duty until he completed treatment. Jake fought the decision, arguing that work was his only refuge. His superiors reluctantly agreed, but assigned him to community patrols, hoping familiar faces might rekindle his former empathy. Sarah watched helplessly as her husband transformed. The gentleman who had spent hours teaching Emily to paint with watercolors now spent nights staring at case files, searching for order in chaos. Their home, once filled with Emily's artwork and laughter, became a museum of loss, pristine and silent. Jake's colleagues whispered about his harsh treatment of minor offenders, particularly teenagers who reminded him of the troublemakers he once helped guide. His citation numbers rose while his community connections withered. The local kids who once waved eagerly at his patrol car now scattered at his approach. The department's annual psychological evaluation noted significant unresolved trauma and concerning behavioral shifts, but budget cuts had gutted the mental health support system. Jake's supervisor, remembering his decorated past, continued giving him chances, hoping time would heal what therapy couldn't reach. On his worst days, Jake would drive by the special needs school where Emily once thrived. He'd sit in his patrol car watching children arrive in wheelchairs and walking frames, each one a knife to his heart. These moments of vulnerability were his secret, the only times he allowed himself to feel the full weight of his loss. Then he'd straighten his badge, steal his expression, and return to being Officer Wilson, the man his daughter would no longer recognize. The annual summer festival transformed Central Park into a kaleidoscope of joy and community spirit. Colorful banners danced in the warm breeze, while the aroma of cotton candy and grilled corn wafted through the air. Local vendors had set up their stalls in neat rows, creating a vibrant marketplace that buzzed with activity and laughter. Derek had promised Maya this special day for weeks, watching her excitement grow as she marked off calendar days with her paintbrush. He'd taken a rare day off from his FBI duties, determined to give his daughter the perfect summer memory. Maya wore her favorite blue dress, matching her wheelchair's custom paint job, with a new set of art supplies tucked safely in the back pocket. Children darted between stalls, their faces sticky with candy apples and ice cream. Parents gathered in small groups, sharing stories and keeping watchful eyes on their little ones. The community band played cheerful tunes from the gazebo, their music mixing with the carousel's mechanical melody and the delighted squeals from the face painting station. Local police officers patrolled casually through the crowds, more participants than observers in the festivities. Some handed out plastic badges to children, posing for photos and sharing safety tips with parents. The festival had always been a showcase of community policing at its finest, breaking down barriers between law enforcement and residents. Maya's artistic spirit found inspiration everywhere in the way sunlight filtered through balloon strings, in the patterns of shadows cast by the carnival games, in the expressions of joy on children's faces. Her sketchbook balanced on her lap, capturing quick impressions with confident strokes. Several festival goers stopped to admire her work, earning shy smiles and quiet thank yous. The playground area had been specially modified for the festival, with temporary ramps installed alongside the regular equipment. Children of all abilities played together, their laughter a testament to the community's commitment to inclusion. Maya's eyes lit up at the sight of the accessible swing set, a recent addition she had helped design through her artwork. Derek watched his daughter navigate the festival grounds with growing confidence. Other parents smiled and waved, familiar with Maya from her art exhibitions and community classes. The festival committee had even displayed some of her paintings in the community center's window, celebrating local talent. The afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the scene, creating what photographers call the magic hour. Families posed for pictures, vendors called out their last-minute specials, and the band switched to softer melodies. The atmosphere was perfect, a snapshot of small-town America at its most idyllic. Nobody could have predicted how quickly this peaceful scene would shatter. The festival security team, a mix of local police and civilian volunteers, maintained their routine patrols. The day's incident report showed nothing more serious than a lost child quickly reunited with parents in a minor dispute over a game prize. As the festival reached its peak attendance, Maya steered her wheelchair toward the playground, her heart set on trying the new accessible swing. Derek followed close behind, carrying their shared cotton candy and watching his daughter's excitement build. The moment seemed perfect, too perfect, perhaps, as fate prepared to unleash a storm that would change their community forever. The confrontation erupted like a sudden storm in paradise. Maya's wheelchair rolled steadily toward the playground entrance, her hands carefully guiding her path through the gravel. She hunched forward slightly, focused on navigating the uneven terrain, her sketchbook secure in her lap. The late afternoon sun caught the glitter in her hair clips, creating tiny rainbow reflections on her determined face. Officer Jake Wilson stood at his post, scanning the crowd with increasingly agitated eyes. He'd been on edge all day, the festival's family atmosphere stirring memories he'd fought to suppress. Every child's laugh echoed Emily's, every wheelchair triggered flashes of his last morning with her. His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his collar, the summer heat suddenly suffocating. When Maya approached, something in Jake's mind fractured. The sight of her young, disabled, yet radiating joy, just as Emily had triggered a cascade of suppressed emotions. Her blue dress, so similar to Emily's favorite, her wheelchair decorated with artistic flair, the way she held her head high despite her limitations, it was too much, too familiar, too painful. "Excuse me," Officer Maya's voice carried the same gentle politeness Emily had always shown. "Could you help me reach the swing?" The simple request, delivered with such innocent hope, shattered Jake's already fragile composure. In his distorted perception, Maya wasn't just a child seeking help, she was a ghost, a cruel reminder of his failures as a father. Jake's face contorted with an emotion beyond anger, a toxic mixture of grief, guilt, and unprocessed trauma. "Get out of here," he snarled, his voice unrecognizable even to himself. Maya's expression shifted from hope to confusion, then fear, but she held her ground with quiet dignity. "But sir, I just want to." The slap came without warning, echoing across the playground like a gunshot. Jake's hand moved with the mechanical precision of someone lost in a nightmare, striking Maya's cheek with enough force to snap her head to the side. The sound silenced the festival's ambient noise as if someone had pressed a cosmic mute button. Maya's small hand rose to her reddening cheek, tears welling in her eyes but refusing to fall. She stared up at Jake with a mixture of shock and something else, a flash of understanding that seemed beyond her years. For a split second, their eyes met, and Jake saw not just his victim, but a mirror reflecting his own broken soul. The crowd's reaction began as a collective gasp, then exploded into chaos. Phones emerged like flowers blooming in fast motion, capturing the aftermath of violence that none could quite believe they'd witnessed. Parents pulled their children close, teenagers shouted in outrage, and several men stepped forward, their bodies tensing for intervention. Derek, only yards away, felt time slow to a crawl as he processed what he'd just witnessed. The cotton candy slipped from his numb fingers as rage and protective instinct surged through his veins. His FBI training kicked in automatically, analyzing threats and plotting responses, but the father in him wanted nothing more than to tear Jake apart. The moment hung suspended between heartbeats: a police officer with his hand still raised, a brave little girl refusing to cry, and a father preparing to unleash hell. None of them knew that this split second would become the catalyst for changes that would ripple through their community for years to come. The peaceful festival had become ground zero for a confrontation that would force them all to face their deepest wounds and highest ideals. The aftermath exploded with the force of a detonated bomb. Derek reached Maya's side in 3 long strides, his FBI training warring with paternal fury. He positioned himself between his daughter and Jake, his body coiled with barely contained rage. The festival's cheerful atmosphere had evaporated, replaced by a tension thick enough to choke on. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" Derek's voice cut through the growing crowd noise, deadly calm despite the inferno raging inside him. The badge on Jake's chest caught the sunlight, a bitter reminder of betrayed trust. Parents pulled their children away, forming a loose circle around the confrontation, their phones recording every moment of the unfolding drama. Maya remained remarkably composed, one hand still touching her reddened cheek. Her eyes darted between her father and the officer, showing more concern for their potential clash than her own injury. The art supplies scattered around her wheelchair created a poignant contrast to the violence that had erupted, colored pencils and hope spilled across the gravel. Jake stood his ground, but something had shifted in his expression. The initial rage had cracked, revealing glimpses of horror at his own actions. His hand trembled at his side, the same hand that had struck an innocent child. He stammered, his authority crumbling as reality crashed through his trauma-induced haze. The crowd's reaction grew more vocal, a chorus of outrage and demands for justice. "Call the police," someone shouted, the irony of the statement lost in the moment. "He needs to be arrested," another voice added. Phones captured every angle of the confrontation, ensuring that this moment would soon spread far beyond the confines of their community. Derek felt Maya's small hand grasp his wrist, grounding him despite his fury. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice steady despite everything. "I'm okay." Those 2 words, spoken with such strength, nearly broke him. Behind him, he could hear her wheelchair creaking as she adjusted her position, refusing to retreat despite her fear. Other officers began arriving, drawn by the commotion. They approached cautiously, reading the tension in the air. Their presence added another layer of complexity to the situation, colleagues forced to choose between protecting one of their own and upholding the justice they'd sworn to serve. The festival security team struggled to maintain order as more people gathered, drawn by the commotion. The band had stopped playing, leaving an eerie silence broken only by the murmur of the crowd and the distant sound of approaching sirens. The carnival rides continued their mechanical cycles, their cheerful music now seeming grotesquely inappropriate. Sarah Wilson, Jake's wife, pushed through the crowd, her face draining of color as she took in the scene. She had been volunteering at the face painting booth, maintaining her own tenuous connection to children after Emily's death. The sight of her husband standing rigid with horror at his actions stopped her in her tracks. As backup arrived and the situation began to stabilize, the real impact of what had happened started to sink in. This wasn't just an incident of police brutality, it was a community trauma unfolding in real time, captured on dozens of phones and witnessed by hundreds of stunned festival goers. The peaceful summer afternoon had become a crucible that would test their town's values, relationships, and capacity for both justice and mercy. The video exploded across social media platforms like wildfire in a drought. Shaky smartphone footage captured the moment from multiple angles: the raised hand, the sound of impact, the stunned silence, then chaos. Within hours, national news networks picked up the story, their breaking news banners screaming "Officer strikes disabled child at community festival" across millions of screens. Local Facebook groups erupted with debate. Those who knew Jake's history with his daughter Emily tried to provide context, while others demanded immediate justice. The footage played on an endless loop, each viewing stirring stronger emotions. Maya's quiet dignity in the face of violence resonated deeply with viewers, while Jake's uniform became a symbol of authority abused. Twitter hashtags multiplied: "Justice for Maya," "Policeman now," "Community in Crisis." Activists seized the moment, connecting this incident to broader patterns of police misconduct. Yet others pointed to the mental health crisis among law enforcement officers, sharing statistics about PTSD and inadequate support systems. National advocacy groups for disabled rights issued statements condemning the attack. Maya's artwork, previously featured in local galleries, began circulating online alongside the violent footage, a stark contrast between creativity and destruction, innocence and trauma. Her paintings of wheelchair-bound figures soaring through colorful skies took on new meaning. The local police department's social media channels were flooded with demands for action. Their initial statement, a carefully worded promise to investigate the incident thoroughly, only fueled public outrage. Comment sections became battlegrounds between those demanding Jake's immediate arrest and others calling for understanding of his personal tragedy. Derek's FBI background added another layer of complexity to the story. News outlets seized on this angle, framing it as a clash between law enforcement agencies. Professional courtesy collided with public accountability as reporters dug into both men's service records, uncovering Jake's decorated past and Derek's distinguished career. Sarah Wilson faced her own social media nightmare as users discovered her identity. Her volunteer work with disabled children and her loss of Emily became public knowledge, adding layers of irony and tragedy to an already complex narrative. Some offered sympathy, while others questioned her ability to help children given her husband's actions. Local businesses began taking sides. Some displayed "We Stand with Maya" signs in their windows, while others quietly supported the Wilson family, remembering Jake's years of service before tragedy changed him. The festival grounds, usually cleaned up the day after, remained untouched, crime scene tape marking the spot where a community's trust was shattered. The media circus grew as national news vans descended on their small town. Reporters stationed themselves outside the Thompson home, the police station, and the Wilsons' house, hungry for any update or comment. Maya's art teacher released a statement describing her students' gentle spirit and determination, which went viral alongside images of her recent works. By nightfall, what had begun as a local incident had transformed into a national conversation about police accountability, mental health support for officers, disability rights, and the power of social media to demand justice. In their small town, residents locked their doors against the media frenzy, knowing that tomorrow would bring even more scrutiny, more questions, and more painful revelations about the price of unhealed trauma. Before we continue this powerful story of justice and healing, take a moment to hit that like button. Your support helps share these important messages about compassion and accountability with others. 10 years earlier, Jake Wilson and Derek Thompson stood together at the Police Academy graduation, their friendship forged through shared dreams of serving their community. Their paths had intertwined throughout their careers, Jake becoming a decorated officer while Derek moved to the FBI, but their bond remained unshaken until Emily's diagnosis changed everything. The revelation of their past connection stunned the community. Photos surfaced of Jake and Derek at Emily's 5th birthday party, Derek's arm around Jake's shoulders as they watched Emily and Maya playing together. Maya had been 3 then, both girls finding joy despite their shared condition. The image circulated online, adding another layer of complexity to the unfolding drama. Derek had been first on the scene the night Emily died. He'd received Jake's frantic call while working late at the FBI office, but arrived at the hospital too late. The memory of Jake's breakdown in the hospital corridor haunted him, still a strong man shattered by circumstances beyond his control. That night, Derek had promised to always be there for his friend, a promise now tested by unimaginable circumstances. Their shared history included countless moments of triumph and support. Jake had been Derek's rock when Maya's mother died in childbirth, spending nights helping with the newborn while Derek struggled with grief. Derek had stood beside Jake through Emily's numerous surgeries, their friendship strengthening through each crisis. The department's mental health records revealed a troubling pattern. Jake had refused counseling after Emily's death, throwing himself into work instead. His supervisors noted increasing signs of PTSD, but budget cuts had eliminated mandatory psychological support. Derek had tried to intervene, arranging private therapy sessions that Jake never attended. Their last conversation before the festival incident had been a heated argument about Jake's increasingly aggressive behavior. Derek, seeing his friend spiraling, had threatened to report him for psychiatric evaluation. Jake had responded with cold fury, accusing Derek of betrayal. The friendship fractured that day, neither man realizing how tragically their next encounter would unfold. Emily's medical records painted a heartbreaking picture. Like Maya, she had faced cerebral palsy with remarkable courage, her condition requiring constant care and attention. Jake had been a devoted father, learning medical procedures, adapting their home, and spending hours in therapy sessions. His dedication to duty had ultimately cost him his daughter's final moments. The police department's internal communications revealed that several officers had expressed concerns about Jake's mental state. His former partner had requested a transfer, citing Jake's unpredictable reactions to cases involving children. Yet his stellar record and the department's staff shortages had kept him on active duty. Local news archives documented Jake's transformation from community hero to troubled officer. Articles praising his work with troubled youth gave way to incident reports and civilian complaints. The timeline aligned perfectly with Emily's decline and death, tracking a good man's descent into trauma-induced darkness. The depth of connection between the two families emerged slowly. Sarah Wilson had taught Maya's first art class, recognizing in her the same creative spirit Emily had shown. The girls had shared physical therapists, medical equipment, and dreams. These bonds, once sources of strength and support, now added layers of betrayal to an already complex tragedy. The community fractured like ice in spring, cracking along unexpected lines. At City Hall, protesters gathered daily, their signs expressing conflicting messages: no excuse for abuse alongside support our officers in crisis. The division spread through neighborhoods, churches, and schools, forcing people to choose sides in a tragedy that defied simple solutions. Local business owners found themselves caught in the crossfire. The cafe where Jake used to buy coffee for fellow officers now displayed Maya's artwork in its windows. The physical therapy center where both Emily and Maya had received treatment became a neutral ground, its staff maintaining careful silence while treating patients from both sides of the divide. Veterans groups rallied behind Jake, citing the lack of mental health support for first responders. They shared statistics about PTSD rates among police officers, arguing that the system had failed Jake long before he failed Maya. Their advocacy complicated the narrative, turning a seemingly clear-cut case of police brutality into a broader discussion about officer wellness. Religious leaders struggled to guide their congregations through the moral maze. Pastor Roberts, who had baptized both Emily and Maya, delivered a sermon about forgiveness that sparked heated debates. The synagogue support group for parents of disabled children saw attendance drop as members struggled with conflicting loyalties. The police department faced internal strife as officers divided between supporting their colleague and upholding their oath. Young officers, inspired by Jake's earlier career, now questioned their own future in law enforcement. The union representative's statement about complex circumstances only fueled public outrage. Town hall meetings became battlegrounds of ideology. Parents of disabled children spoke about their fears, while police families described the constant stress of life in uniform. Each testimony added layers to the debate, revealing deep-seated issues that had simmered beneath the community's peaceful surface. Social workers and mental health professionals offered perspectives that further complicated public opinion. They highlighted the department's repeated budget cuts to psychological services, arguing that Jake's actions were a predictable outcome of systemic failure. Their expert testimony shifted some anger from the individual to the institution. School board meetings turned contentious as parents debated how to discuss the incident with children. Maya's art teacher defended her student's character while acknowledging Jake's past contributions to school safety programs. The divide affected classrooms, with some children repeating their parents' hardened positions. Local media struggled to maintain objectivity as more details emerged. Each new revelation, Jake's therapy requests denied due to budget constraints, his previous commendations for work with disabled youth, Derek's attempts to intervene added complexity to what had initially seemed a clear moral issue. The town's annual police community outreach program faced cancellation as organizers feared confrontations. The incident had shattered years of carefully built trust between law enforcement and citizens, particularly in neighborhoods with disabled residents. Yet some argued that now, more than ever, dialogue was essential for healing. The personal toll of the incident carved deep wounds into all involved. Maya's nightmares began 3 days after the festival, her usual colorful dreams replaced by dark figures in uniforms. She would wake screaming, her small hands clutching her sketchbook like a shield. The once vibrant paintings that filled her room now featured shadowy shapes and muted colors, reflecting her inner turbulence. Derek watched helplessly as his daughter struggled to process her trauma. During physical therapy sessions, she flinched when male therapists approached, her body remembering what her mind tried to forget. Yet somehow she continued painting, each stroke seeming to release a fraction of her pain. Her latest series, titled Through Different Eyes, captured moments of the incident from various perspectives, including, surprisingly, Jake's. Jake's isolation deepened with each passing day. Suspended from duty pending investigation, he spent hours in Emily's unchanged room, surrounded by the medical equipment that had failed to save her. Sarah found him there one morning, methodically arranging Emily's painted butterflies while muttering about protection and failure. His service weapon had been confiscated, but his demons remained armed and dangerous. The Thompson home became both fortress and fishbowl. News vans camped outside, forcing Derek to install privacy screens on all windows. Maya's art studio, usually filled with natural light, now felt like a bunker. Yet she insisted on continuing her weekly art classes, though attendance had dropped as parents struggled with their own fears and prejudices. Sarah Wilson faced her own battles, torn between loyalty to her husband and her work with disabled children. The special needs center where she volunteered asked her to take a leave of absence, fearing liability. She spent sleepless nights reviewing old videos of Emily and Maya playing together, searching for answers in their innocent laughter. Derek's internal conflict intensified as memories of his friendship with Jake surfaced. Each morning, preparing for another day of investigations and interviews, he would pause at Maya's door, remembering how Jake had helped paint her nursery. The weight of their shared history made his duty to seek justice even more painful. The police department psychologist, Dr. Rebecca Chin, worked overtime trying to support officers traumatized by their colleagues' actions. She noted increasing anxiety among those with children, particularly those who had known Emily. But the thin blue line had become a complex web of loyalty, duty, and moral uncertainty. Maya's physical health began showing signs of stress. Her cerebral palsy symptoms intensified under emotional strain, requiring increased medication. Yet even through this, she maintained a strange compassion that confused many adults. Officer Jake must be very sad, she told her art therapist, adding a tear to the portrait she was painting of him. Jake's own health deteriorated rapidly. Without the structure of police work, his PTSD symptoms escalated. Sarah found him one night in full uniform, patrolling their empty backyard, convinced he could prevent another tragedy. His former partner tried to reach out, only to be met with incoherent ramblings about protecting children by keeping them away. The ripple effects touched countless lives. Maya's classmates struggled to understand why their friends sometimes stared blankly at nothing. Jake's neighbors debated moving away, unsure about living near someone they now viewed as unstable. Even Dr. Chin admitted to colleagues that this case challenged her professional objectivity, forcing her to confront the limits of healing in a broken system. The courthouse became a fortress as the legal proceedings began. Security personnel lined the marble halls, their faces tense as opposing groups of protesters faced off outside. The morning sun cast long shadows through the high windows, highlighting the gravity etched on every face in the packed courtroom. District Attorney Samantha Collins presented the prosecution's case with methodical precision. Security footage from multiple angles played on the courtroom screens, each showing the moment of impact in brutal clarity. The sound of Maya's head snapping back echoed through the hushed room, causing several jurors to flinch visibly. Jake sat stone-faced beside his attorney, his police uniform replaced by a civilian suit that seemed to hang loosely on his frame. Sarah sat directly behind him, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles showed white. The past month had aged them both dramatically, their faces bearing the strain of public scrutiny and private turmoil. Internal affairs investigators revealed a troubling pattern in Jake's recent conduct. Reports showed increasing instances of excessive force, particularly in cases involving disabled individuals or children. Yet his supervisors had repeatedly overlooked these red flags, citing his previous exemplary record and understanding of his personal tragedy. The department's political dynamics surfaced during cross-examination. Budget meetings revealed repeated denials of funding for officer mental health support, despite urgent requests from the department psychologist. Several senior officers faced uncomfortable questions about their decision to keep Jake on active duty despite clear signs of deteriorating mental health. Derek's testimony created a tense atmosphere. As both an FBI agent and victim's father, his words carried unique weight. He described not only the incident but also Jake's gradual descent into instability, detailing ignored warnings and missed opportunities for intervention. His voice cracked only once when describing Maya's nightmares. The prosecution introduced body camera footage from other officers who responded to the festival incident. Their recordings captured the immediate aftermath: Maya's quiet dignity, Derek's controlled fury, and Jake's moment of horrified realization. The jurors watched intently as multiple perspectives revealed the full impact of those crucial moments. Defense attorney Michael Richardson focused on Jake's distinguished career and personal tragedy. Department commendations, citizen letters of appreciation, and news articles about his work with troubled youth painted a picture of a dedicated officer destroyed by grief. Each piece of evidence seemed to ask, can a good man's lifetime of service be erased by one moment of trauma-induced violence? The police union's involvement complicated matters further. Their representative testified about systemic failures in officer support while simultaneously defending the department's handling of Jake's case. This contradictory position highlighted the complex politics surrounding police accountability and mental health. But media coverage intensified as high-profile witnesses took the stand. Expert testimonies about police PTSD rates, disability rights, and law enforcement reform created headlines that reached far beyond their small community. But the trial had become a focal point for national debates about police accountability and mental health support for first responders. The first plot twist emerged during the trial's third week. A retired officer, Thomas Carter, came forward with footage from his personal camera captured 7 years earlier. The video showed Jake diving into an icy river to save a drowning child. That child was Maya. The revelation sent shockwaves through the courtroom as Derek's face drained of color, remembering the incident he'd tried to forget. Medical records revealed that Maya would have died that winter day if Jake hadn't acted. He had performed CPR for 8 minutes until paramedics arrived, refusing to give up despite the freezing temperatures. The local paper's archived story quoted Jake saying, "Every child deserves a chance to live their dreams." Those words now hung heavy in the courthouse air. Further investigation uncovered more connections. Jake had been instrumental in securing funding for the accessible playground where the festival incident occurred. His advocacy, inspired by Emily, had helped create spaces where children like Maya could play safely. The project files contained dozens of letters from grateful parents, including one from Derek himself. Derek's life debt to Jake complicated the narrative significantly. His testimony had omitted this crucial detail, leading to heated debates about credibility. The defense team seized upon this revelation, arguing that Derek's pursuit of justice was clouded by guilt over their fractured friendship. Sarah Wilson's personal diary, submitted as evidence, revealed that Emily and Maya had been more than casual acquaintances. Every Thursday, while Jake worked late shifts, Sarah had taught both girls art therapy sessions. Maya's earliest paintings hung in Emily's room, silent witnesses to a friendship cut short by tragedy. The discovery of Jake's repeated requests for mental health support painted a different picture of the department's role. Emails showed him practically begging for help in the months following Emily's death, even offering to pay for therapy himself. Each request was denied due to budget constraints or staffing issues. A series of text messages between Jake and Derek, dated weeks before the incident, revealed Derek's growing concern. "You're not okay, brother," one message read. "Let me help before something happens." Jake's responses showed a man aware of his declining mental state but trapped in a system that prioritized appearance over wellness. Former patients from Jake's community outreach programs came forward with stories of his compassion. A teenager, now grown, described how Jake had helped her through her own disability diagnosis, spending off-duty hours helping her family navigate support services. Her tearful testimony highlighted the tragic transformation of a once caring officer. The most stunning revelation came from Maya herself. During a private chamber meeting with the judge, she shared a painting she'd been working on since the incident. It depicted two scenes side by side: Jake saving her from the river and the festival confrontation. Her artist's statement read simply, "Sometimes heroes get lost too." These discoveries forced everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about redemption and responsibility. The clear lines between victim and aggressor blurred, revealing a more nuanced story of human tragedy. As one juror was overheard saying during a break, "How do you judge a man who saved a child's life only to later strike her in a moment of broken grief?" Sarah Wilson's death stunned the community into silence. They found her in Emily's room, surrounded by Maya's paintings and a handwritten note that simply read, "The weight is too heavy." Her suicide transformed the trial from a case of police brutality into a tragic examination of collective failure. The courthouse flags flew at half-mast as both prosecution and defense teams struggled to process this devastating development. Jake's breakdown in court following Sarah's death was brutal in its rawness. During his testimony, he collapsed, screaming about losing both his daughters and now his wife. The jury watched in shocked silence as this once proud officer shattered completely, his grief echoing off the courthouse walls. Even the most ardent critics felt the weight of his human tragedy. Maya's response to Sarah's death revealed her extraordinary capacity for empathy. She created a series of paintings titled Sarah's Light, depicting her art teacher in moments of joy with Emily. These works, displayed in the courthouse lobby, became a gathering point for mourners from both sides of the divide. The healing power of art began bridging seemingly impossible gaps. The media circus intensified, but the tone shifted dramatically. National news coverage now focused on the human cost of inadequate mental health support for law enforcement families. Sarah's history of advocating for police spouse support programs gained posthumous attention, her previous interviews about living with an officer's trauma playing on endless loops. Local police officers' spouses formed a support group in Sarah's memory, sharing their own struggles with secondary trauma. Many revealed similar stories of watching their partners change under the weight of unprocessed grief and stress. The silence around mental health in law enforcement families began to crack, revealing a crisis larger than anyone had acknowledged. Derek faced his own crisis as memories of Sarah's role in Maya's early life surfaced. She had been there during his wife's funeral, caring for newborn Maya, while he struggled with his own grief. The intertwined history of their families added layers of complexity to his pursuit of justice. His daughter's tears for Sarah matched his own confused emotions. The prosecution team struggled to maintain focus as the human tragedy overshadowed legal arguments. District Attorney Collins found herself arguing not just about police accountability, but about systemic failures that destroyed entire families. Her closing arguments evolved into a plea for comprehensive reform rather than simple punishment. Maya's physical health deteriorated as she processed Sarah's death. Her cerebral palsy symptoms intensified under emotional stress, requiring hospitalization. From her hospital bed, she continued painting, each work a dialogue between pain and hope. Her art therapy sessions became a crucial part of both her recovery and the community's healing process. Jake's isolation deepened to dangerous levels. Under suicide watch in custody, he spent hours talking to Emily and Sarah in empty rooms. His coherence deteriorated rapidly, concerning even his strongest defenders. The man who had once protected their community now needed protection from himself, his breakdown a public testament to untreated trauma. The community's grief manifested in unexpected ways. A candlelight vigil for Sarah evolved into a broader memorial for all they had lost: Emily, Sarah, trust in institutions, and innocence about mental health. As one speaker noted, "We're not mourning just Sarah, but the cost of silence and the price of looking away." The courtroom fell silent as Maya wheeled herself to the witness stand, her small frame dwarfed by the massive wooden enclosure. At 13 years old, she had insisted on testifying despite her father's concerns. Her blue dress, the same shade as her art studio walls, seemed to glow under the harsh fluorescent lights. Dr. Amanda Chin, the court-appointed child psychologist, sat nearby, ready to intervene if needed, but Maya's composure surprised everyone. She spoke clearly, her voice carrying the weight of wisdom beyond her years. "I want to talk about two Officer Jake," she began, "the one who saved my life and the one who hit me." The jury leaned forward as Maya described the festival incident with remarkable clarity. She didn't minimize the fear or pain, but neither did she condemn. "I saw Emily in his eyes," she said, causing Jake to visibly flinch. He wasn't seeing me at all. Her insight into Jake's psychological state left even the experts stunned. Public protests outside grew louder as Maya testified, but inside, her quiet strength commanded attention. She described her nightmares, her struggles with art therapy, and her confused feelings about someone who had been both savior and attacker. Each word seemed carefully chosen, painting a picture as vivid as her artwork. Defense witnesses painted Jake's deterioration in stark detail. Fellow officers described watching their colleague spiral after Emily's death, their testimony revealing a department ill-equipped to handle psychological trauma. Many broke down while recounting missed opportunities to intervene, their guilt palpable. Medical experts testified about the intersection of PTSD and grief, explaining how trauma could distort perception. Brain scans showed the physical impact of Jake's untreated condition. The prosecution's attempts to focus solely on accountability faced increasing challenges as the human tragedy deepened. Sarah's suicide note, read into evidence, revealed the crushing weight of being married to a traumatized officer. Her words, "The system doesn't just fail them, it fails all of us," echoed through the courtroom. Several jurors wiped away tears as her final plea for mental health reform was shared. The most powerful testimony came from unexpected sources. Emily's former nurse described Jake's dedication as a father, contrasting it with his later dissent. Maya's art teacher presented a timeline of her paintings showing how both children had processed their challenges through creativity. These personal glimpses humanized everyone involved. Social media erupted as Maya's testimony went viral. The hashtag #2Jakes trended nationally, sparking debates about accountability versus mental health support. Her painting of Jake's two faces, hero and aggressor, became a symbol of the case's complexity, shared millions of times online. As the testimony phase concluded, the traditional boundaries between victim and perpetrator had blurred considerably. Maya's powerful witness statement forced everyone to confront uncomfortable truths about human nature, trauma, and the price of neglecting mental health. The jury faced what seemed an impossible task, measuring justice in a case where every victory would also be a loss. The first plot twist shocked the courtroom during closing arguments. Maya unexpectedly asked to present something to the court. With permission granted, she wheeled herself to the front, carrying a large, covered canvas. The room held its breath as she unveiled her latest work, a triptych painting titled "The Hearts We Cannot See." The left panel showed Jake saving her from the river, his uniform pristine, his face determined. The center depicted the festival incident, but from an angle no camera had captured, focusing on Jake's eyes, showing the moment Emily's ghost overshadowed Maya's reality. The right panel, most stunning of all, showed Jake and Derek together, supporting a bridging tree whose branches formed the words "Healing starts with understanding." Jake broke down at the sight, his first genuine display of emotion since Sarah's death. His anguished cry, "Emily, I'm sorry," pierced the courtroom's formal atmosphere. Maya wheeled closer to him, displaying a courage that brought tears to the jurors' eyes. In that moment, victim and aggressor dissolved into simply human beings wounded by life's cruelties. The second plot twist emerged through Derek's response. He approached the bench, requesting permission to address the court. Standing before everyone, he revealed the full story of the river rescue, how Jake had nearly died saving Maya, how hypothermia had left him hospitalized for weeks, how he had refused any recognition for his actions. Security footage from the river incident, previously sealed due to Maya's minor status, played on the courtroom screens. The raw heroism of Jake's actions, diving repeatedly into freezing water, performing CPR while himself suffering from exposure, brought a new dimension to the case. His desperate words that day, "Not another child, not on my watch," echoed his devotion to protecting the vulnerable. Maya's art teacher stepped forward with a portfolio of Emily's artwork, preserved by Sarah. The similarities between Emily and Maya's artistic styles proved haunting. Both girls had painted about flying free from their wheelchairs. Both had captured the world with extraordinary empathy. The parallel between their lives became impossible to ignore. Jake's personal journal, found in Sarah's effects, revealed his growing awareness of his mental decline. Entries showed him struggling against violent impulses, begging for help through proper channels, even contemplating suicide to protect others from his deteriorating condition. His last entry before the festival read, "I see Emily everywhere. I can't tell what's real anymore." Medical experts rushed to reframe their testimony in light of these revelations. They explained how Jake's hero complex, combined with PTSD and unresolved grief, created a perfect storm of psychological trauma. His action at the festival was recontextualized as a tragic intersection of past heroism and present breakdown. Maya's own statement to the court brought the final revelation. She shared her recurring dream, not a nightmare about the attack, but a vision of Emily and Sarah painting together, creating a bridge between broken hearts. Her words, "Sometimes the bravest thing is to see the good in someone who has hurt you," transformed the trial's entire emotional landscape. The prosecution and defense teams found themselves in uncharted territory. The clear lines of justice had blurred into a complex tapestry of human suffering, heroism, and redemption. As one juror later commented, "We came to judge a monster but found a hero who'd lost his way. How do you sentence someone's pain?" The crisis point erupted when protesters breached the courthouse security. Two opposing groups collided in the Marble Halls, police supporters and disability rights activists clashing in a chaos of shouts and accusations. The judge ordered an immediate evacuation, but Maya refused to leave, her wheelchair positioned between the advancing crowds. In that charged moment, Jake broke free from his guards, his instincts as a protective officer overriding everything else. Instead of fleeing, he positioned himself in front of Maya, shielding her from the surging crowd. The sight of the accused protecting his victim froze everyone in place. Maya's small hand reached up to grasp his trembling one, a gesture captured by dozens of press cameras. Derek's reaction defied all expectations. Rather than pulling Maya away, he joined them, standing shoulder to shoulder with his former friend. The three formed a powerful tableau. Victim, aggressor, and protector merged into a complex symbol of human reconciliation. The crowd's anger dissolved into confused silence. Maya's voice cut through the chaos, clear and strong. "This is what healing looks like." She pulled out her sketchbook, rapidly capturing the scene unfolding around them. Her heart, created in real time, projected onto the courthouse walls through a news camera, showed the humanity beneath the conflict. The protesters found themselves being drawn into Maya's impromptu art session. She handed out paper and pencils, encouraging everyone to express their feelings through drawings. Ardent activists and angry officers gradually set aside their signs to participate in this unexpected moment of communal creativity. Jake's breakdown in front of the crowd revealed raw truth. He spoke about Emily, about Sarah, about his desperate attempts to protect everyone even as his mind betrayed him. His vulnerability transformed him from a symbol of police brutality back into a human being, broken but still capable of growth. Mental health professionals in the crowd stepped forward, sharing their own stories of working with traumatized officers. Their testimony, given informally in the courthouse halls, highlighted the systemic failures that had contributed to this tragedy. The protest evolved into an impromptu forum on police mental health reform. Derek addressed both sides, his FBI training helping him mediate the tense situation. He spoke about the complexity of justice, about how punishment without healing perpetuates cycles of trauma. His words, combined with Maya's quiet strength, began building bridges across seemingly impossible divides. The media captured every moment of this unprecedented scene. Local news teams, initially prepared to cover a riot, found themselves documenting a spontaneous peace process. Maya's artwork, Jake's protection, Derek's reconciliation, each element contributed to a powerful narrative about the possibility of transformation. As the crisis subsided, the courthouse had become something new, not just a place of judgment, but a space for community healing. The judge witnessing this transformation called an emergency meeting with both legal teams. It was clear that traditional justice alone couldn't address the deeper wounds this case had exposed. A new approach would be needed, one that honored both accountability and healing. As this powerful story of healing and redemption unfolds, we invite you to join our community of compassionate viewers. By subscribing to our channel, you help us share more stories that challenge our understanding of justice and humanity. Your support makes it possible to explore these important conversations together. The verdict came unexpectedly. Jake Wilson was found guilty, but with an unprecedented condition. The judge, influenced by Maya's testimony and the community's transformation, mandated a hybrid sentence combining accountability with rehabilitation. Instead of traditional imprisonment, Jake would serve his time working at a new mental health center for law enforcement officers, his story becoming both warning and inspiration. The courthouse steps became a gathering place for reconciliation as the verdict was announced. Police officers and disability advocates stood together, their previous animosity transformed by the trial's revelations. Maya's artwork, displayed in the courthouse lobby, provided a visual narrative of their journey from conflict to understanding. District Attorney Collins praised the innovative sentence, calling it a step toward healing-centered justice. The terms required Jake to undergo intensive therapy while helping establish support programs for officers dealing with trauma. His experiences would inform new protocols for identifying and treating PTSD in law enforcement. Derek's statement after the verdict reflected the case's complexity. "Today we acknowledge both the harm done and the potential for healing," he said, standing beside Maya's latest painting, a powerful piece showing broken badges being reformed into bridges. His words resonated with both victims' rights advocates and police supporters. The national media struggled to categorize the outcome. Traditional headlines about police brutality gave way to nuanced discussions of mental health, institutional responsibility, and restorative justice. Maya's perspective, shared through her artwork, offered a template for addressing similar cases across the country. Professional organizations studied the verdict's implications. Police unions and disability rights groups found common ground in advocating for better mental health support. The case became a reference point for discussions about reform, with experts citing its unique approach to balancing accountability and rehabilitation. Maya's own reaction captured public imagination. She wheeled herself to Jake after the verdict, offering him a small painting she had created during the trial, a simple image of two hands reaching across a divide. Her gesture of reconciliation, photographed by dozens of reporters, became a symbol of possibility in seemingly impossible situations. Legal scholars debated the verdict's precedential value. Some praised its innovative approach to addressing systemic issues, while others worried about maintaining consistent standards of accountability. The judge's detailed opinion emphasized the need for justice systems to evolve alongside society's understanding of trauma and recovery. The police department faced its own reckoning as the verdict highlighted institutional failures. New policies were immediately implemented, including mandatory mental health screenings and improved support systems for officers and their families. The chief of police publicly acknowledged their role in Jake's descent and committed to comprehensive reform. As the courthouse emptied that evening, a small group remained: Jake, Derek, and Maya, sitting quietly in the lobby surrounded by her artwork. Their silence spoke volumes about the complexity of healing and the long road ahead. The verdict had closed one chapter but opened another, challenging everyone to reimagine what justice could mean. The healing process began in unexpected ways. Maya started teaching art therapy classes at the mental health center where Jake received treatment. Her first session, attended by officers struggling with PTSD, transformed the sterile room into a space of creative expression. Jake sat in the back, his hands trembling as he picked up a paintbrush for the first time since Emily's death. Derek's journey toward forgiveness manifested through action. He established a foundation in Sarah and Emily's names, dedicated to supporting mental health services for law enforcement families. The first fundraising event featured an exhibition of Maya's paintings alongside artwork created by officers in recovery, including Jake's hesitant early attempts. The mental health center became a model for innovative treatment approaches. Jake's presence there, initially controversial, proved invaluable. His willingness to share his story, both the heroic saves and the tragic breakdown, helped other officers acknowledge their own struggles. The two Jake's narrative became a powerful tool for understanding trauma's complexity. Professional counselors noted significant changes in Jake's demeanor as treatment progressed. The rage that had consumed him gave way to deep grief, then gradually to acceptance. His art therapy sessions with Maya became a highlight for both her natural empathy, helping him reconnect with the father he used to be. Maya's recovery surprised everyone. Rather than retreating from her trauma, she transformed it into a mission. Her Healing Hearts art series, featuring stories of both victims and officers dealing with PTSD, traveled to police departments nationwide. Her wheelchair became a symbol not of limitation but of movement toward understanding. Community healing took tangible forms. The playground where the incident occurred was redesigned with input from both Maya and Jake, featuring inclusive equipment and a memorial garden for Sarah and Emily. Officers and disability advocates worked together on the project, their shared labor bridging old divides. The police department's culture shifted gradually but significantly. Officers began speaking openly about mental health challenges, sharing resources and supporting colleagues showing signs of stress. The Wilson Protocol, named for both Jake and Sarah, established clear pathways for psychological support without career stigma. Derek watched his daughter's influence spread beyond their community. Her artwork and story inspired similar programs across the country, combining art therapy with police training. He found himself speaking at law enforcement conferences alongside Jake, their reconstructed friendship offering hope to other departments grappling with trauma. Family members of other officers came forward with their own stories, creating support networks that crossed jurisdictional lines. Sarah's dream of comprehensive family support began taking shape, though she wasn't there to see it. Her journal became a guidebook for departments developing family assistance programs. The process wasn't always smooth. Healing rarely is. There were setbacks, difficult days when Jake struggled with guilt or Maya faced painful memories. But the foundation of understanding they'd built proved stronger than the triggers and tears, supporting them through each challenge on their shared journey toward recovery. A wave of reform swept through the police department in the months following the verdict. The chief implemented mandatory quarterly mental health screenings, established a dedicated family support unit, and created a crisis intervention team specializing in situations involving disabled individuals. Each change reflected lessons learned from Jake's tragic journey. The Wilson-Thompson Initiative became a national model for police reform. Its core principles, integrating mental health support, family assistance, and disability awareness, attracted attention from departments nationwide. Maya and Derek found themselves traveling to conferences, sharing their story alongside mental health professionals and police trainers. State legislators took notice. A bill incorporating key elements of the initiative passed with bipartisan support, allocating funding for comprehensive officer wellness programs. The debate surrounding the legislation focused not on politics but on the human cost of neglecting mental health in law enforcement. The police academy curriculum underwent significant revision. New cadets now received extensive training in trauma recognition and management, with Jake's case serving as a central case study. Maya's art therapy program became a required component, helping future officers develop emotional awareness through creative expression. Community oversight evolved beyond traditional models. A joint committee of officers, mental health professionals, and disability advocates began reviewing departmental policies. Their recommendations led to innovative approaches in community policing, emphasizing prevention and support over punishment. The department's family support services expanded dramatically. Sarah's writings about living with a traumatized officer became required reading for police spouses. Regular family counseling sessions, once considered optional, became standard practice. The stigma around seeking help began to crumble. Training protocols shifted to emphasize human connection. Officers participated in regular community engagement activities, including art workshops with disabled children. These interactions helped break down barriers and prejudices, creating understanding that extended beyond professional encounters. The medical community partnered with law enforcement to develop better trauma screening tools. Regular psychological evaluations became as routine as physical fitness tests. Officers showing signs of stress received immediate support rather than facing professional consequences. Data tracking systems were implemented to monitor officers' mental well-being. Early warning signs that had been missed in Jake's case could now be identified and addressed promptly. The department's commitment to prevention became a cornerstone of its new identity. The reforms reached beyond policies and procedures to touch the department's very culture. Officers began speaking openly about their struggles, sharing resources, and supporting colleagues in crisis. The change wasn't just institutional, it was deeply personal, reflecting a new understanding of strength through vulnerability. Maya's transformation manifested in unexpected ways. Her artwork evolved from simple expressions of trauma to complex explorations of human redemption. The exhibition, titled Badges and Brushes: A Journey of Understanding, displayed at the National Gallery, became a landmark event featuring collaborative pieces created by Maya and recovering officers, including Jake. Her physical therapy sessions became opportunities for innovation. Working with specialists, she developed new techniques for artists with disabilities, incorporating her experience into a program that would help others express themselves despite physical limitations. The Maya method gained recognition in rehabilitation centers nationwide. The nightmares gradually subsided, replaced by dreams of flying wheelchairs and healing bridges. Her therapist noted how she processed trauma through art, transforming dark memories into messages of hope. Each painting seemed to release another layer of fear, replacing it with understanding. Jake's rehabilitation progressed steadily under the new program. The man who once struck a child in uniform now helped train officers in trauma recognition. His story, painful yet powerful, became a cornerstone of police academy training. Students watched in silence as he shared both his heroic saves and devastating failures. Working with Maya in art therapy sessions, Jake rediscovered pieces of himself he thought lost forever. He began painting scenes from Emily's life, each stroke a step toward healing. The walls of the treatment center filled with his journey from darkness to dawn, inspiring others struggling with similar demons. Derek witnessed his daughter's influence expand beyond their community. Police departments across the country requested her artwork for their training facilities. Her simple message that understanding surpasses judgment resonated with officers and activists alike, bridging seemingly impossible divides. The Foundation for Officer Wellness, established in Sarah and Emily's memory, flourished under their joint leadership. Jake's insights into officer trauma combined with Maya's artistic approach created unique therapeutic programs. Their work challenged traditional notions of recovery and rehabilitation. Maya's school performance soared as she channeled her experiences into academic achievement. Her college application essay, titled "The Colors of Justice," earned her scholarships and national recognition. She planned to study both art therapy and criminal justice, determined to continue building bridges. The local community celebrated their collective healing through an annual festival of understanding. The event, held at the same park where tragedy had struck, now symbolized transformation. Children with disabilities painted alongside police officers, creating murals of hope and connection. Jake found purpose in mentoring troubled officers, his own story serving as both warning and inspiration. Working with Maya helped him honor Emily's memory while preventing others from falling into trauma's abyss. Together, they created a legacy of healing that extended far beyond their original pain. The community's transformation manifested in concrete ways. The park where the incident occurred became a symbol of healing, featuring an innovative, inclusive playground designed with input from Maya and disability advocates. Police officers regularly volunteered there, breaking down barriers through simple acts of connection. Weekly art therapy sessions at the community center brought together unlikely groups of officers dealing with PTSD, children with disabilities, and families affected by police incidents. These gatherings, initially met with skepticism, became powerful catalysts for understanding. The walls filled with collaborative artwork telling stories of pain and redemption. Local businesses embraced the change, displaying both Maya's artwork and pieces created by officers in recovery. The cafe where Jake once drank coffee alone now hosted monthly badges and brushes events, where community members and police shared stories over art supplies and conversation. The police department's annual community outreach evolved dramatically. Instead of traditional demonstrations of force and equipment, officers now participated in inclusive activities designed by Maya. The sight of uniformed officers painting and playing alongside children in wheelchairs became wonderfully ordinary. Schools incorporated lessons from the incident into their curriculum. Students learned about mental health, disability rights, and the importance of understanding over judgment. Maya's story became a teaching tool for empathy, while Jake's journey illustrated the complexity of human nature. Faith communities united in supporting the healing process. The Interfaith Council established a support network for officers' families, fulfilling Sarah's vision. Monthly gatherings provided safe spaces for sharing struggles and celebrating progress in breaking down barriers. Local media coverage shifted from sensationalism to thoughtful exploration of community transformation. Regular features highlighted collaborative projects between police and disability advocates. The narrative changed from division to unity, though reporters didn't shy away from acknowledging ongoing challenges. New traditions emerged spontaneously. The annual Understanding Through Art Festival drew participants from neighboring communities, expanding its impact. Officers and children worked side by side, creating murals, their shared creativity bridging historical divides. Professional organizations studied the community's model of reconciliation. Law enforcement agencies and disability rights groups found common ground in supporting mental health initiatives. The Wilson-Thompson approach became shorthand for innovative community policing strategies. The transformation reached beyond surface changes to touch deep cultural attitudes. Citizens began viewing police officers as complex humans rather than symbols of authority, while officers developed greater empathy for the diverse community they served. The U.S. versus them mentality gradually dissolved into a shared sense of purpose. The broader implications of the case rippled through society like waves in a pond. Major police departments across the country began implementing variations of the Wilson Protocol, incorporating art therapy and mental health screening into their standard procedures. Maya's approach to healing through creativity sparked a revolution in police training nationwide. Mental health awareness in law enforcement underwent a dramatic shift. Officers who once stayed silent about their struggles now found supportive environments for seeking help. The stigma surrounding PTSD in police work began to crumble, replaced by understanding that vulnerability could coexist with strength. Disability rights organizations and police unions found unprecedented common ground. Their collaborative efforts led to improved training protocols for officers interacting with disabled individuals. Maya's story became a cornerstone of these programs, demonstrating how empathy could prevent tragedy. Social justice advocates studied the case as a model for restorative justice. The balance between accountability and healing challenged traditional notions of punishment. Academic papers analyzed how Maya's approach to reconciliation could inform broader criminal justice reform. Police academy curricula evolved to include substantial mental health components. Future officers learned about trauma recognition and management through both clinical instruction and artistic expression. Jake's story served as a powerful reminder of the costs of ignoring psychological wounds. The impact on disability awareness extended beyond law enforcement. Schools, businesses, and public institutions reassessed their approaches to inclusion. Maya's influence helped shape policies that viewed disability not as a limitation but as a unique perspective worthy of respect. Legislative changes followed the cultural shift. States passed laws requiring comprehensive mental health support for law enforcement officers and their families. The Sarah Wilson Act mandated regular psychological screening and ensured access to counseling services. Research institutions documented the long-term effects of the community's transformation. Studies showed reduced incidents of police brutality, improved officer mental health, and stronger community bonds. The data supported what Maya had demonstrated through art, that understanding could prevent violence. Media coverage of police-community relations evolved to include mental health perspectives. Stories about officer wellness became as common as reports on misconduct. The public began to understand the complexity of law enforcement challenges, moving beyond simplistic narratives. The intersection of art therapy and law enforcement gained recognition as a legitimate field of study. Universities developed programs combining criminal justice and creative arts therapy. Maya's methods influenced a new generation of professionals dedicated to healing through artistic expression. The Foundation for Police and Community Healing launched with unexpected leadership, Maya as creative director, Jake as program director for officer wellness, and Derek overseeing operations. Their unusual partnership raised eyebrows initially, but their shared vision of transformation through understanding quickly gained support. The Foundation's first major initiative, Bridges of Understanding, paired officers showing signs of stress with art therapy programs designed by Maya. Jake's personal experience helped identify officers at risk, while his story gave them hope for recovery. The program's success rate in preventing stress-related incidents exceeded all expectations. National recognition came swiftly. The Foundation's model of combining mental health support, artistic expression, and community engagement attracted attention from police departments worldwide. Maya's wheelchair became a symbol of strength rather than limitation as she traveled internationally, sharing their approach to healing. Celebrity endorsements and corporate sponsorships flooded in, allowing the Foundation to expand rapidly. They established satellite centers in major cities, each featuring art studios accessible to both officers and community members. The walls of these centers filled with collaborative artwork telling stories of transformation. The Foundation's research division, led by top mental health professionals, documented the impact of their programs. Data showed significant reductions in police brutality incidents and improved mental health outcomes for officers participating in art therapy. Their findings influenced police training policies nationwide. Regular events brought together unlikely allies, disability advocates working alongside police unions, mental health professionals collaborating with community activists. These gatherings, once tense with unspoken prejudices, evolved into productive sessions where real change took shape. The Foundation's scholarship program, named in honor of Sarah and Emily, supported both children with disabilities pursuing arts education and officers' children studying mental health fields. This investment in future generations ensured their work would continue beyond their personal involvement. Jake found purpose in mentoring officers struggling with trauma, while Maya's art therapy programs expanded to include family members affected by police stress. Derek's FBI connections helped implement their methods at federal law enforcement agencies. Their individual strengths combined to create lasting change. The media dubbed them the unlikely trio, but their partnership demonstrated the power of transcending traditional boundaries. Their story inspired similar initiatives worldwide, proving that healing could emerge from even the darkest circumstances. As the Foundation grew, they never lost sight of their original mission, transforming pain into purpose. Each new program reflected their shared belief that understanding could prevent tragedy, and that art could build bridges where words failed. The lasting changes manifested in subtle yet profound ways. Police cruisers now carried art supplies alongside standard equipment, officers trained to offer creative outlets during stressful encounters. The sight of uniformed officers sitting on sidewalks, drawing with troubled youth, became increasingly common across the nation. Maya's influence extended beyond art therapy. Her advocacy led to mandatory disability sensitivity training in police academies, incorporating hands-on experience with wheelchairs and other mobility devices. Officers learned to see disability not as a vulnerability but as a different form of strength. Jake's transformation became a case study in police psychology textbooks. His journey from decorated officer to aggressor to healer challenged traditional narratives about mental health in law enforcement. Departments nationwide began viewing PTSD not as a career-ending diagnosis but as a treatable condition requiring support. The annual Healing Through Understanding conference held at the park where the incident occurred drew thousands. Police officers, mental health professionals, disability advocates, and community members shared stories and strategies. The event became a model for community police reconciliation nationwide. Local schools incorporated art therapy and mental health awareness into their curricula. Children grew up understanding both the challenges faced by law enforcement and the importance of accessibility for disabled individuals. The next generation viewed these issues through a lens of empathy rather than fear. The police department's culture shifted permanently. Officers openly discussed mental health struggles, supported colleagues showing signs of stress, and embraced art therapy as a legitimate tool for emotional regulation. The stigma around seeking help dissolved, replaced by a culture of proactive wellness. Derek's FBI unit developed new protocols for handling cases involving disabled individuals, incorporating lessons learned from Maya's experience. These procedures, emphasizing communication and understanding over force, spread throughout federal law enforcement agencies. The city became a pilgrimage site for police departments and disability rights organizations studying community transformation. Visitors observed art therapy sessions, interviewed program participants, and witnessed firsthand how creativity could bridge seemingly insurmountable divides. Research confirmed the program's impact reduced use of force incidents, improved officer mental health outcomes, stronger community relations. Academic studies documented how art therapy and disability awareness training created more effective, empathetic law enforcement. The changes reached beyond policies and procedures to touch individual lives. Officers' children grew up seeing their parents process stress through art, while disabled youth encountered police officers as allies rather than threats. These personal transformations ensured the changes would endure. The story's final chapter remained unwritten. Maya, now preparing for college, continued expanding her art therapy programs while developing new techniques for artists with disabilities. Her latest project, a virtual reality platform allowing officers to experience life from a wheelchair user's perspective, promised to revolutionize police training. Jake divided his time between counseling troubled officers and working with disabled youth, finding redemption in helping others avoid his past mistakes. His quiet presence at Police Academy graduation served as both warning and inspiration, reminding new officers that strength includes acknowledging vulnerability. Derek's foundation grew beyond its original scope, establishing international partnerships and influencing police reform worldwide. Yet he never forgot the personal cost that sparked this change, keeping Sarah and Emily's photographs on his desk alongside Maya's evolving artwork. Questions remained about sustaining these changes beyond their personal involvement. Would future generations maintain the delicate balance between accountability and compassion? Could institutions preserve the human element that made their approach successful? The community continued grappling with complex issues of justice and healing. Each new incident involving police and disabled individuals tested their progress, requiring renewed commitment to understanding over judgment. The solutions weren't perfect, but the framework for addressing them had fundamentally changed. Maya's art studio, now a recognized center for healing and reconciliation, attracted both skeptics and believers. Some questioned whether their approach could work in larger cities or different cultural contexts. Others saw universal principles that transcended local circumstances. The media's interest never completely faded. Periodic updates on their story sparked fresh discussions about police reform, disability rights, and mental health support. Each retelling reminded people that transformation required ongoing effort and honest confrontation with uncomfortable truths. Academic researchers studied their model's long-term effectiveness, debating whether personal chemistry could be replicated systematically. The data showed promising results, but questions persisted about scaling individual transformation to institutional change. The future held both promise and uncertainty. New challenges would emerge, requiring fresh approaches and continued adaptation. Yet the foundation they built, understanding through creativity, healing through connection, remained solid. Their story ended not with closure but with continuation. Each art therapy session, each officer counseled, each barrier broken down added another brushstroke to an ever-evolving canvas of community transformation. The work continued, guided by the belief that even the deepest wounds could become sources of healing. Your support means everything to our team. If this story of healing, redemption, and community transformation has touched your heart, please take a moment to subscribe to our channel. Share this video with friends and family who might find hope in Maya's journey and Jake's transformation. Hit that like button and let us know in the comments what touched you most about this story. How has it changed your perspective on justice and healing? Would you like to see part 2, following Maya's college journey and the Foundation's global impact? Tell us below. Together we can spread messages of understanding and hope. Every subscription helps us continue sharing stories that matter.